trial and were found guilty. And they are still serving life imprisonment without parole. But what we uncovered was that the President of the Union, who was a close friend of the Marcos government, was involved in the murders. It was his gun that was used in the murders, but he was never brought to trial. There was actually more information. And at that point, after a year, when he was not brought to trial, we knew that the U.S. government was moving to protect him. Why? So that question remained in our minds for a very long time, and he was not convicted of the murders until after we won the civil suit. When we were at a standstill with not being able to prosecute the President of the Union, we filed in 1982 a civil suit for $30 million against the U.S. and Philippine government, against the Marcoses as individuals, and we filed it at the same time as Marcos was making his first state visit to the United States in 16 years. We filed it as a class action lawsuit on behalf of members of the anti-Marcos movement in the United States and on behalf of Silme and Jean's families. And we filed it as a class action lawsuit because we wanted an injunction on what we have called the Philippine Infiltration Plan. We alleged that the murder stemmed from an illegal operation of Philippine agents sent into the Filipino community to harass and silence the anti-Marcos movement in the United States. And many of these Philippine agents were stationed in Philippine consulates and the Filipino community throughout the United States. And we also allege that the U.S. complied with the Philippine Infiltration Plan. And the class action lawsuit was asking for an injunction to that plan. We filed the lawsuit under the Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act, which allows a citizen of the United States to bring suit against foreign governments whose agents and employees commit tortuous acts in the country. And we sued the Marcoses individually, the Philippine government, former U.S. Secretary of State Alexander Haig, and the U.S. Attorney General William Smith, and other government officials. So you can see that when we filed this in Seattle, which is not a huge city, it's not, at the time, didn't get a lot of publicity, people thought, oh my God, what are these people thinking? So there was this theory of, grandiose theory of who was responsible for Silme and Jean's death in terms of the U.S. and Philippine government versus a small union internal dispute. However, within months, the U.S. federal court ruled that the United States government would receive absolute immunity based on national security and foreign policy prerogatives. That we did not be specific enough around the Philippine government charges, but that we would have a chance to amend our case to be more specific, which we eventually did. The Philippine government officials that we charged in the case were given immunity based on diplomatic immunity. So what it says is you can commit murders, diplomats can commit murders in the United States, but they will have immunity. And the U.S., on the Marcoses as individuals, it was the United States government that filed for a suggestion of immunity, which means that the executive branch of the U.S. government, that these branches are immune from prosecution for also illegal acts of murder. So this case was filed in 1982, and so for the next few years, it remained in court under appeals. And what gave the movement life was in 1983 when Benigno Aquino was murdered. And the whole world, including in the United States, thought if Marcos could kill Benigno Aquino in front of the whole world, then yes, maybe he could have killed Silme and Jean. And then, through the years, we began to uncover evidence of the Philippine infiltration plan. In 1979, a well-known journalist uncovered that the U.S. Congress had actually done a study about the Philippine, 5 countries that had foreign spy activities running rampant in the United States. That report was sealed, and you could see if they're sealed, that means that they don't want people to know exactly what's going on in the United States in terms of foreign activity, foreign spy activities. And then in 1983, we also uncovered a document, a Defense Intelligence Agency document, which said that 5 high-level Philippine intelligence officers were being dispatched to the United States, and that their mission, the attachés, at the end it says, quote, "The attachés will undoubtedly report on and possibly operate against anti-Marcos Philippine activists in the United States." This was a secret document that was surfaced by Congress as well. And they name all 5 agents. And so it shows again that the United States knew what was happening, and that in fact, in intelligence language, possibly operate against means physical harm, including murders. So over the years, we continued to work on our case, finding evidence to support the Philippine infiltration plan. And the turning point for our case, again, was what was happening in the Philippines. And in 1986, People Power overthrew Marcos, and Marcos came to Hawaii. And at that point, we filed to reinstate the Marcoses because they were no longer head of state, and they should receive no longer immunity, given that they were in the United States as well. And the judge allowed us to reinstate the Marcoses as defendants in our case. As part of Marcos's landing in Hawaii, he brought with him thousands and thousands of documents. And one of the documents that he brought with him, which was reviewed by a former CIA agent, former trained CIA agent who was at one point in the Philippine intelligence, Bonifacio Gallego, who eventually became a congressman here after the Marcos dictatorship was overthrown. And he was able to find what was called the Mabuhay document. And the Mabuhay document was a financial balance sheet, a dispersal sheet that was signed by General Ver. And what the Mabuhay document was dispersals for money for both propaganda projects in the United States and for the murders of Silme and Jean. So what Bonifacio Gallego was able to see with his intelligence training eye was 2 dispersals on the document which matched the dates that the former president of the Alaska Cannery Workers Union went to San Francisco. 2 amounts, $10,000 and $5,000, which matched the dates that the president of that union went to San Francisco. And that was the money that was paid for Silme and Jean's murder. And so that was the smoking gun document which showed that the Marcos government paid for the murders. And it was Bonifacio Gallego came to the trial that was held in Seattle in 1989, and the jury of 10 men and women found the Marcoses liable for the murders of Silme and Jean, believed this whole theory of the Philippine infiltration plan. But unfortunately, where I have said that we have not been able to completely get justice for Silme and Jean, lies within the fact that we have never been able to bring to court the United States government for the murders of Silme and Jean. As I said, Marcos would never have carried out these murders without the nod from the United States. We know that the United States knew the Filipino infiltration plan was fully operative. We know that they knew what the mission of the Filipino infiltration plan was. And through our own private investigation, we think that the U.S. government gave the Philippine government under Marcos misinformation that Jean was carrying $290,000 to the New People's Army, knowing that then he would be targeted for assassination. Those are things that we have never been able to prove in court because the U.S. was dismissed based off of national security issues. Marcos, in deposition, has stated that the United States knew that his foreign intelligence agencies were operating in the United States, and discovery that U.S. Naval Intelligence Service was sharing information about the KDP with Philippine intelligence agencies. And so we hope that one day we'll be able to prove in court and hold our government liable for the murders of Silme and Jean. So if you have any questions, we can leave that to the panel.
Cindy, so more on the Jean and Silme case, we will now call on Bruce and Celia.
Welcome, thank you for having us here today. I appreciate that. I will shift the topic a little bit. My charge is to try to answer the question of what was the approach that the KDP took to its work that might help give a context for this case. How did this case happen and what took place? How did the KDP operate? So I will try to do this within a few minutes. I've never been known to say anything in less than 5 minutes, but I'll try. I think that I want to start by saying that Dr. Nomenzo is one of my mentors, and I'm glad to be here with him today. He was the person who told me I better get back to school and get some credentials. I was a middle-aged ex-activist with a high school diploma, and so I had to follow that advice. Thank you today. He also mentioned Walden, and I see Joe Rocamora and Dean, and there's a number of our comrades who were in the KDP in the United States and are now here in the Philippines, doing a wide range of work. So certainly I want to make sure people understand that many of our KDP activists are actually back here in the Philippines and continuing whatever work they have in front of them. So I just need that water. I agree with Dedong. I think that so long as the struggle in the Philippines is incomplete, and many of us in this room have thought that we were almost there, and then it slipped out of our fingers, and we tried again and thought it was almost there, and it slipped out of our fingers. But surely the struggle for democracy and justice in the Philippines is far from over. And because of that, the relation of the struggle in the Philippines to the overseas Filipino community is crucial. And I'm going to try to talk a little bit about that link. And I agree with Dedong that probably there is certainly a need for a new version, a new and improved version of the KDP. It would have to be very different for no other reason that it's nice to see many young people in the room, but most of us who were in the KDP are growing older. So for no other reason, whatever the new form of support for the Philippine struggle, it would have to be different. we simply don't have the energy we had when we were